This week in Ottawa Business Journal's Behind the Headlines, speculation about the future of offices, an agriculture startup in Cornwall bringing produce to stores across Ontario, and the impact of tightening restrictions on bars and restaurants. All this and more coming up right now. Hello and welcome to Behind the Headlines for the week ending October 9th, 2020. I'm Michael Kern from the Ottawa Business Journal. Behind the Headlines is a weekly podcast from the Ottawa Business Journal that explores the top local business stories of the week. And to do that, I'm joined by two of my colleagues, the Ottawa Business Journal, Peter Kavesi and David Sally. Hello to you both. Listen, we're going to kick things off with something that might be one of the hottest debates with entrepreneurs and business owners, and that involves their physical office spaces and what that will look like in the future. Dave, you sat in on a interesting chat between two significant local people, experts in this area. What did they speculate about when it comes to offices?
Well, Mike, as you say, this is one of the biggest topics of discussion, really, in just about any industry, and particularly in real estate. I mean, what is the future of the office going to look like? As you know, everybody's working. Still, most of us remotely. We're all working either. Peter, you're in the office, but Mike and I are at home, and so are still many thousands of other people. And last Thursday night, the Ottawa chapter of the Financial Executives International Canada, they had an interesting online discussion. There were probably about 30 or 40 people, and they're talking about the future of office space, what they think it's going to look like. One of the key experts on the panel is Meredith Thatcher. She's a workplace management consultant, and she has her own practice here in town. And, she hit on a really key point, like employees are looking for flexibility, right? That seems to be the real byword these days. And as we know, the pandemic has really forced employers to rethink their concept of the workplace. As you know, we're all doing meetings on Zoom now. We can't have those traditional face-to-face sort of brainstorming sessions. So this has led to a lot of experimentation, as Thatcher noted. Companies trying to figure out the best way to go forward. How do we navigate through this situation? And as she said, office life really isn't for everyone. I mean, some people actually really like the freedom of working from their living room and being able to come and go work their own hours and that sort of thing, not having that hectic commute every day. So she urged sort of the discussion to continue that experimentation. And she floated an interesting idea, the hub and spoke model, where you might have satellite offices in places like Orleans or Barhaven, so that not everybody has to gather at one central head office downtown or in Canada or wherever. And she said there could be some interesting side benefits from this. This could mean that smaller groups of people who don't normally get to kind of rub shoulders at work, they might meet one another. They might figure out some new ideas. They can sort of bounce ideas off each other in ways they couldn't before in a much bigger, more impersonal office space. So she really suggested that could be one approach that might work and might actually lead to some new, more creative approaches to working and solving problems.
Okay. It's not completely a panacea. Like, there wasn't complete agreement in that discussion, Peter. And some people pointed out, and I'll ask you about this, that it's that there might be some downsides to the hub and spoke idea.
Well, it's a really neat concept, but when you have 3 times as many offices, it also means you have 3 times as many cleaning contracts to administer, 3 times as many IT setups to always iron out. So absolutely, this is a concept that has a lot of appeal, but it does come with additional administrative costs. So the question that's sort of left is, will employers see a return on investment on that sort of hub and spoke model that would outweigh those costs?
The other thing that occurs to me, Peter, is the hub and spoke might be more appropriate for really larger companies, companies with hundreds of people as opposed to 20 people.
Right.
You're not gonna create an Orleans hub out here, for 3 or 4 people. Listen, we're going to move on to the second story. It is, of course, Thanksgiving. We're in the bountiful harvest period, and there's a Cornwall company, a hydroponic grower, that is doing gangbuster businesses, and a little bit here, Peter. It's two Cornwall companies coming together, one small, one massive. Tell us what's going on.
Well, again, just as well, sort of highlight, this is part of our OBJ regional series that we launched earlier this year when we expanded our editorial mandate to cover businesses beyond just the confines of the national capital region. So, as you mentioned, this story does take us to Cornwall with two really cool companies, one that we've all heard of and one that maybe not everyone has heard of. So, this is a story that involves an indoor farming startup called Fieldless Farms, and it grows two types of lettuce at its 20,000 square foot facility in Cornwall. And it really sort of had a big breakthrough moment when it did sign a deal with Farm Boy that now sees its produce on the shelves of 20 Farm Boy stores across Ontario. There's a couple things though that make this company really exciting, a really exciting one to watch. One is market opportunity, and the other is just the ambition of its company's executives. So, just on the market opportunity, Canada, every year we import billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of fresh food, fresh produce. And of course, in 2020, there is a lot of talk about shortening supply chains and more domestic capacity on all fronts. And at the same time, when you look specifically at hydroponics and food, the cost of a lot of this equipment is going down at the same time that the quality of the equipment, the efficiency of the equipment is going up. So there's certainly an opportunity there. On the flip side, the CEO of Fieldless Farms, John Lomino, he's just full of ambition. The company did recently secure some private capital to bolster its balance sheet, and he made it clear that this is just a start for the company. He really wants to scale up. He has ambitions to add more growing facilities in various Canadian cities in the coming years, more types of produce. So, like I said, the two sides of this story really make it an interesting company to watch.
Yeah, it's an interesting story, and just to bring this down to the fields, as they might say, if I remember the story correctly, they can grow lettuce in 20 days. So a head of lettuce, that sounds pretty quick to me. I don't know how quick lettuce typically grows, but I was pretty impressed with that. Dave, in terms of their business model, it's I wouldn't really call it agri-tech in the sense that they're not developing their own technology, right? They're more employing other people's technology. Tell me why they're picking that business model as opposed to something more heavily involved in research.
Well, Mike, I guess what it really boils down to is, the old business philosophy of really of how it's important to have a real focus. They realize they can't be all things to all people, and they think that's what kind of sets them apart. They're not trying to do it all. They leave the hydroponics technology to the experts. They say that's not what we do. We're all about figuring out the supply chain, making sure we get these products delivered as efficiently as possible into as many stores as possible, and that's really where they're putting their efforts, and really honing in and focusing on that side of the business. They'll they say they're willing to partner with all kinds of technology companies if that's what it takes to find the best solution and the most efficient way to grow new produce. And really they say they just feel like they're better off doing it that way. And they're looking at basically they're focused on striking that balance between automation and manual labor, as they say, figuring out the best way to produce the products, get them on shelves. And as far as the technology goes, they'll leave that up to the experts.
Okay, let's thanks for that, Dave. Let's move on to our third story. And as they say in the news business, this one's rapidly evolving. We're recording this around 10 a.m. on Friday morning, I believe, as the provincial cabinet is meeting and considering rolling things back to what's being called right now as a stage 2 light. So we don't have the we can't comment specifically on the restrictions. Peter, you can bring us up to speed, however, with some statistics that were released by Statistics Canada in terms of employment in this sector. What did you hear on Friday morning?
So these new restrictions are coming down at a time when we are starting to see some signs of a sustained. Well, it might be premature to say sustained, but certainly a lot of signs of recovery in the job market. So Statistics Canada on Friday did release the latest unemployment figures. Right away, my key takeaway from that is that the number of people who are working in Ottawa-Gatineau hit its highest levels since the pandemic began. So there were 730,000 residents working here. Haven't seen those sorts of levels since March of 2020. So that was really encouraging. The unemployment rate is still by local standards pretty stubbornly high at 8.6%. But again, just sort of tying into the latest news that we're expecting to see of a tightening of restrictions on bars and restaurants is that the accommodations and food services, which of course has been one of the hardest hit industries throughout the pandemic, once again we're starting to see some of those jobs come back. That particular industry added more than 1,000 jobs last month, so it's about a 7% growth. So I guess there's two ways of looking at that. So through the again, with the expected restrictions coming, is that we are entering it at a bit of a modest strength, having gained some of that back, but it also would potentially be interrupting a bit of a recovery that we're seeing.
So, Dave, as I mentioned, we don't know the exact decision from provincial cabinet on restrictions, but you have been speaking to restaurant owners, bar operators. What are they telling you this week?
Well, yeah, like I spoke to some, obviously late last week when the province did actually ease some of the restrictions a little bit, allowing more people in restaurants and but also limiting the number of people to 6 per table, that sort of thing. And now and they were saying at the time that that they could live with it was a good balance what the province had suggested at that point. Many of them were suggesting we'll have to see now what happens this week. I mean, and today in particular, announcement is expected soon after the provincial cabinet emergency meeting. It's likely there's going to be a big crackdown again. We're going to go back to stage 2 light, as they're calling it, which likely means indoor dining and drinking is going to be once again shelved. And if not, we've seen this week, Summer Baird from the Hintonburg Public House, she posted on Instagram that on Wednesday, they did not have a single customer for the first time ever. And she's been open, almost 10 years. So, I think it's pretty clear this is going to have a significant impact. There are many, whether it's bars and restaurants, whether it's smaller gyms, facilities like that, meeting centers, that rely, are already really feeling the pinch, and many of them barely hanging on. A full shutdown again could be devastating for their business, and we might, who knows how many of them will be able to survive if this becomes an extended sort of lockdown.
For sure, Dave. We'll be watching these developments with a ton of interest and hoping, for the best for the hospitality sector here and across the province. Peter, we're going to start wrapping up now and take a look ahead to what's coming up. What do you have to share on that front?
So next week, there's a really important date for the local commercial real estate community. It's the annual Fall Ottawa Real Estate Show. This is typically a fairly large one-day event that brings together investors, brokers, property owners, property managers, and suppliers all together for a large one-day conference for journalists that report on commercial real estate. It's just a gold mine of stories, both to take stock of the industry and as well look ahead to the coming year. Certainly, obviously, this year it's going going to take on even added importance given what we were just talking about earlier in the podcast with how significantly the commercial real estate industry has been affected by COVID-19. Obviously, rather than a one-day in-person gathering, it's going to be virtual this year, so it's going to be spread out over 2 days. So that's the other part that's going to be sort of interesting. This is again one of the flagship local business conferences of the year. Now it's going virtual, so it's just going to be curious if there's going to be any sort of long-term implications of that. If people are going to like that format, and it could have implications for years to come, or if this is just going to be a one-time thing this year.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to watch. It'll be the largest virtual gathering of the commercial real estate sector in Ottawa since the pandemic hit. Before I wrap up, I did want to say that another thing happening next week is a big announcement from OBJ and the Board of Trade. As people might recall, we announced our CEO of the year just a couple of weeks ago, John Sicard of Canaxis. That's part of an awards program we do each fall called the Best Ottawa Business Awards. There are 3 awards that are in fact pre-announced. The second to be pre-announced will come next week, and that is the recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award, and I believe it's the 10th time we've done that, so that a little bit of a milestone there. So I won't spill the beans, but I will tease people to keep on watching obj.ca for that news next week. It'll be a great announcement, a great local business and community leader. That's all the time we have for this podcast. I want to remind everyone that you can watch this live sometimes. You can also look for it on YouTube on OBJ's channel. It is also an audio format on Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud, and other platforms. So please try to check us out. And as always, visit obj.ca on a daily basis for the latest headlines. That's all the time we have for this week. On behalf of my colleagues, David Solly and Peter Kavesi, I'm Mike Curran signing off. Hope to see you real soon.